Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Senator Don Oliver grew up as one of 5 kids in a hardworking family in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. His dad wanted him to study theology and join the church, but Oliver decided instead to study law. He had a long career in that field before he was appointed to the Senate in 1990, and he has served there ever since. Senator Don Oliver joins me now to talk all about his life beyond politics. Senator Don Oliver, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's really great to have you here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, thanks.
Well, thanks for taking the time. It's a busy time of year now, I find. I mean, all times of year are busy, but for you to take an hour to devote to us is great.
Yeah, thank you.
I hadn't realized until I was doing some research for this interview that growing up, you were your family was one of the only black families in town.
That's right.
And I was wondering how that impacted you growing up. Was it something that you were aware of, or was it just not on the radar at all?
It's a good question. Sometimes I was aware of it, and sometimes I wasn't. I just thought that I was ordinary and like everybody else. And then all of a sudden someone would say, oh, but you're the little black children. And suddenly you would have to start thinking, my goodness, am I that different just because of my skin color? And so we were forced to think of it from time to time.
Yeah. You talked about your mom and dad as being parents who were strict but loving, and you had 5 siblings, I think. So I can understand the need for being strict, keeping everyone in line. But what are your memories of your parents?
Well, just that. You've described it beautifully. We grew up in a Baptist home, and a very strict Baptist home. You know, no alcohol, no cards, no late hours, study hard, go to church, go to Sunday school, read the Bible, and it was very strict. And on the other hand, our parents did it out of love and affection, and they said, look, if you follow these values, these important principles, it's going to help you throughout your life. And we did get good values from our parents.
Did you ever resent it?
I'm sure we did. You know, there were all kinds of jobs and chores and other things that you would have to do as part of their strictness. And I used to have to work in the garden to help my father, and I didn't like it because there would be black flies and mosquitoes, and I'd like to be playing ball with the guys and so on, and there I had to work. So that kind of strictness, I resented it. But I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
After my father died and after all of my brothers and sisters left home, most of us bought a farm.
Did you really?
so we could sit down and pull weeds and have the black flies and mosquitoes back again. So it was a funny thing.
Couldn't have been that bad then.
I know. Yeah.
You also had music in your life. Music was an important element of your life, and you have had a famous relative, Portia White, who was a soprano?
A contralto.
A contralto. And did you yourself play an instrument?
Yeah, my mother was extremely musical. My mother was a concert pianist and was very well known, and she played for Portia White, contralto. And I was musical. I had my own jazz band. I played the trumpet and was in musical contests and so on.
Wow, were you really? Did you choose it yourself, the trumpet? I mean, was that what?
I think I don't know how I chose that over, like my mother taught piano lessons, and my sister Jeannie played the violin, my sister Shirley the piano, so we were all musical, and music was a major part of our family, as it was in the church.
Yeah.
And I once, more than once, played the trumpet in the church, for special occasions such as Christmas and so on, but.
You would have been almost a band in your own right then.
I know.
5 kids with instruments.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Were your parents, were they happy people? Do you have happy memories of them as people, or were they just very serious?
I think they're very serious. I think my overall impression of my parents, apart from being loving and kind and very good parents and very concerned about us, is they were incredibly hardworking.
Yeah.
And my mother, I told you, taught music. She also taught sewing and dressmaking, and she also was a dressmaker herself and had clients from all over Canada who would come to have evening and other dresses made. And she was a perfectionist, right. And that she would often stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning putting a hem in if it wasn't right, and then she'd take it out unless it was perfect. And my father worked several jobs all his life, and so everyone in my family got a strong work ethic. And we realized that in order to get ahead, we had to be prepared to work and work extra hard.
Did your parents tell you that?
My father was a janitor at university, and he said on more than one occasion that in order for us to get ahead, as he looked around the university and he saw these students, people will be the future of Canada, and if you want to get ahead, you've got to be able to have marks to get into university and to graduate from university, because that's your future. Right. So they stressed education as being something that we all needed.
Now, as I understand it, your father was hoping that you would consider theology and a career in the church.
Yeah.
And why did you decide not to follow that path?
It was very difficult. I had a half-brother, Reverend Dr. Oliver, who was a Baptist minister. My mother's father, Reverend Dr. White, was a very famous Baptist preacher in Nova Scotia. And so I had Baptist preachers on both sides of my family. And I was very interested in philosophy, and I studied a lot of existentialism and so on. And I actually thought of going to Union Theological Seminary in New York. And then I won a scholarship to go to law school, and I took the scholarship to go to law school.
Huh. How did he feel about that?
I think my father was disappointed, and I think he was probably proud that he had a son who was a lawyer, but I think he would prefer that I be a person of the church and continue the family tradition, because it was something very important to him. He was a very religious man.
Yeah. Did any of your other siblings choose to go? No.
No.
So you were the great hope, and you went into law. Oh, well, it's always good to have a lawyer in the family.
That's right.
Yes, it is. Some people get to law school and they enjoy the study of law and they enjoy the challenge of law, but the idea of practicing law is not as appealing. Did you enjoy the practice of law as much as the way that it made you think?
Your questions are all very, very good, because I did go through that. When I finished studying law, I said, I don't think I want to practice. I think I want to go into politics or go into diplomacy or go into something, but I certainly don't want to practice. And someone said, well, if you've got these 3 years of law school, you should at least article and be admitted to a bar.
Right.
So I did article, and that's when I fell in love with practicing law, because I found out what court life was like, and I wanted to be a courtroom lawyer, and I did become a courtroom lawyer, and it was fun for the time that I did it.
Was it? Because I have to imagine it would be stressful to be in a courtroom and you have someone else's fate in your hands.
Yeah, although it depends on what kind of preparation you do, and it depends on what kind of case it is, and it depends on the courts and the judge. It depends upon a lot of things, but I enjoyed a lot of the law that I did practice in the courts. It was just fun.
Right. And you had a long career in the law.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of it courtroom law, or?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
And, a lot of civil litigation, and I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And civil litigation meant not just arguing a case in the lower courts, but taking them on appeals to different appeal levels and so on.
Yeah. And up to that point, had you spent most of your life or all of your life in Nova Scotia?
Oh, yes, I had.
You had, eh? Yeah.
Now, when I was young, I went to Africa for a summer in 1962.
Yeah.
I spent a summer in Ethiopia, and then I spent some time in China and other places. So I was always doing traveling, but for the most part, I resided in Nova Scotia.
Tell me about that summer in Ethiopia. It was for something called Crossroads, is
Crossroads,
that right?
Africa Incorporated. It was a fascinating thing because it was started by a Baptist preacher from the United States, Reverend Dr. Robinson, who felt, let's get our American students out around the world where they can see people in need and help those countries and help those people. And so then he started a chapter in Canada in the late 1950s. And in 1962, I was chosen to go to Ethiopia, and we did our internship down in the United States for a week in Washington. And there they taught us a lot about about some of the problems with water and living conditions, and they gave us information about the history, the culture of the people, and what we would be doing. And the highlight was that we met President John Kennedy. And so we were invited to go to the White House, and he came out to the Rose Garden, and one of the things he said is that my good friend Dr. Robinson is doing something that I would like to emulate, and I think I'm going to start something called the Peace Corps. And because I like his concept of sending students abroad to learn and to help.
Yeah.
And so that's how the Peace Corps got started.
So you were there for that announcement.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
And it was fabulous. I have a picture, you know, of it. He was there, and I was about 15 feet away, but I was in the Rose Garden the same time that President John Kennedy was there.
Isn't that... Was he... you know how sometimes people describe others as being charismatic in that way?
He was very charismatic.
Yeah.
Just an incredible person.
So the type of person where you felt their presence
very
there.
Much.
And, yeah. And what an interesting time in history, too.
Oh, I know.
Tell me about going over to Ethiopia then. What kind of an experience was that for you? Were you prepared for what you encountered?
No, you could never be prepared because, you know, you had no idea it was going to... Haile Selassie was the emperor of Ethiopia, and it was not a very developed country at the time. The Italians had gone in during the war, and they'd built some roads and schools and churches and so on. And so we had a week of orientation in Addis Ababa, the capital, at the University of Addis Ababa, where we met and talked to a number of students and professors, and that was fascinating to get to learn about the modern Ethiopia. Then we got on a bus, and we went up through the mountains for several days on this bus to a small little community called Masham, which had been hurt very, very badly by droughts. And a number of the elderly people died, and so there were a few children left. So our job was to build an extension to a school and to teach school to the young children in our spare time. Okay. So we carried rocks, and we built a school made of rocks, and it was held together by something called chica, mud, straw, and water. Right. And when we weren't doing that, we were talking to the students and teaching them, and it was just great fun.
Were they eager to learn?
Very eager to learn.
They were.
And I remember telling them one day I was giving them the provinces of Canada, and when I gave words like Saskatchewan, they were big, long words and hard for them to pronounce, but they were eager to learn them, you know. So,
did they think you were an oddity, you and your friends?
Very much so. We had a Polaroid camera at the time, and it was one of the first things, Polaroid land camera, that just come out, and you could actually take a picture of someone, and then seconds later this thing came out of the camera, and we would show them, and a lot of the people didn't understand it. That was their image coming out of this box.
Isn't that so interesting?
That was quite a creative.
Wow. You must have also seen hardship, though.
Oh, incredible hardship. We lived in a thatched roof hut and with sleeping bags, and we had no toilets, no electricity. So when it got dark, unless you had a candle, you couldn't read. You had to go to sleep, but you got up with the sun, and you could hear hyenas outside at night, and we basically had to eat what we brought.
Right.
And one of the exciting times for me, we ran out of food, and then we threw straws to see who would go to a village a long way away to bring back food, and I got the straw, and so I went by myself, and it was fascinating to go through some of the things that I went through to get food and get back again.
Like what?
Well, I got lost one time, and then I got very sick one time, and I had difficulty with the language. And,
I bet.
But it was everything led to a great experience, and it made me a stronger and a better person, because every experience I learned from, and it just made me stronger and better able to meet the world that I was going to meet when I came back and faced back in Canada.
How did it change your approach to the world that you encountered when you got back to Canada?
I feel that you always, if you have any luck and any success at all in life, that you have to continue to give back. And And today, Africa is one of the places, like I retire in a little over a year, and Africa is going to be one of the places that I'm going to want to go back to and find ways that I can give back and continue to help. Maybe it'll be as a farmer, maybe as a lawyer, maybe as a teacher, I don't know, but I just want to continue to give back. So that's one of the things that I learned from my experience in Ethiopia, that we in Canada have been lucky and we've been very blessed with all the things that have been provided for us. And now we have to learn to share them and give those things back to others.
You also seem to approach life's experience with an open mind and a kind of optimism that some people are frightened of new experiences or worried about what may happen to them traveling to a different part of the world, living in a different part of the world. But you seem to embrace those experiences. What does that say about your personality?
That's a good question. I think that everyone should travel, and I encourage people to travel, to meet people from other cultures, to learn about their food, to learn about their religion, to learn about the way they live, and to be able to understand them better. Because today, whether we like it or not, we are living in a very diverse society. And the more we can know and understand about those who make up modern Canada and modern Western states, the better we'll be able to cope and get along ourselves. So I think that maybe I saw early that the world was going to change and that people would be coming to Canada from all over the world, which is the case today. And the most successful companies today are the companies that embrace this diversity and bring in and use and utilize all these talents from people from around the world, speaking different languages, who brought up with different religions and so on, and different educations, but they bring so much to the table that it helps people be creative. And creativity is the thing that has driven great successes both in Canada and around the world.
You've really championed this idea of diversity in your time in the Senate, and even in your private endeavors as well. You have been encouraging companies and large organizations to embrace diversity. But there's a difference between people saying they want to do it because it's what they see other people doing and they think it's what they have to do, and people and organizations who decide to do it because they really are genuinely committed to doing it. And you must have encountered the former situation where you're asked to help. It's kind of a nominal interest in being truly diverse. How do you push through and make people recognize the true importance to an organizational structure of this diversity that you champion?
There have been a number of studies done in some of the Ivy League universities in the United States that have taken a group of people in an experiment that they call group think. And the people in one group have all the same age, all grown up in the same environment, all have gone to the same schools, same universities, and have the same degrees. They've been put in one room and asked to solve a problem. In another room, they've got people from around the world, different ages, different colors, different sexes, different everything, and said, here's the problem. And the people in the second group have been more creative and more innovative and have come up with some exciting solutions to the problem. These people have groupthink and they can't get outside themselves. Right. And that's what diversity can bring to the world. So companies like Microsoft and Google and some of the big high-tech companies today recognize the need for this, to get outside the groupthink and to be able to think outside the box and be creative, be innovative, and take a chance. And that's where their successes are coming.
Sure. And I suppose if you're talking to companies, that's going to expand their bottom line.
Exactly.
And that's a good reason in and of itself to be committed.
Yeah. Well,
beyond the societal change.
Exactly. I was talking to some of our senior bankers as recently as a month ago, and most of our Canadian banks now have a lot of activities outside of Canada. And they see that if they're doing business in Indonesia or India or China, and they have people in their bank who have been trained, who understand their philosophy and their mission, who can speak the language, understand the people, that's going to help their business case and it's going to help their bottom line.
Right. Tell me about the experience of serving in the Senate. What were you expecting it when you got the call asking if you would consider an appointment to the Senate?
It was a big surprise, and when I received the call, I was so joyous that I think I just said thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you many times, and it was a great delight when Prime Minister Mulroney did phone. And it is not something I had been expecting, but it has provided me an opportunity to continue to serve the people and to follow through with some of the things I learned in Ethiopia, I learned in school and university about giving back and helping other people, because I have been able to help companies, individuals, communities, and groups not only in Canada but abroad through the chance that I've had to serve in the Senate of Canada. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Beyond the fact that we are a Westminster system and, the Senate is ingrained in our system of governance, I don't think a lot of people really understand the function of the way that the Senate functions and its importance. And I thought maybe you could speak to that a little bit and about your own experience there and the work that's done in the Senate and why it's important.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand what the Senate does because the Senate has deliberately not been promoting itself. And one reason for that is that the House of Commons is elected, and they are elected directly by the people, and the Senate is appointed by the Prime Minister, by one person. And so the Senate, I believe, has kind of felt, well, since we really don't represent the people, we shouldn't be taking too proactive a role in things. But the people who represent the people through an elective process really should be speaking. So given that, the Senate does exceptional work. And Sir John A. Macdonald said when they were debating for days, what's this Senate creature going to look like and what should it be? He said it really has to be a body of sober second thought. Because of the partisanship of the House of Commons, very often they will make mistakes in legislation, in bills. And so when it comes to the Senate, this body of appointed people from all walks of life will have a chance to look at it, analyze it, and if it's constitutionally invalid, they can say that and send it back to be corrected. So since I've been in the Senate, we've sent a number of bills back that were imperfect, that had flaws and mistakes in them, and really could not become law until those flaws were corrected. And so the Senate's done good work there. In another area, the Senate does a number of independent studies on matters that affect Canadians or have been affecting Canadians, or the Senate has come up with new issues of public policy that are designed to make Canada a better place. And so on some of the committees that I've served on, either as chair or a member, we've come up with a number of reports that have actually changed Canada. And I've even come up with private members' bills that have helped change Canada. So as a senator, you can do a number of things to change the law of the land. And our system has served Canadians very well over many years.
Talk to me a little bit about, because you've mentioned that these are the last weeks and months of your time in the Senate. What are you going to do next? Are you going to go back to your farm? Are you going to do something else? Travel more? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a great question once again. I've been giving a lot of thought to what to do when my time is up, and I've discussed it with my doctors and others, and they say that a number of people don't give it a lot of thought, and it often can be fatal. So I find it impossible to slow down now in the Senate, so I'm still working long hours, and I will probably continue to work long hours when I retire. I will, in fact, go to the farm because I'm so happy there and I love gardening.
And you want to get back to the black fly.
Yes. And I have a couple of books in my head that I would think I would like to write.
Oh, good.
And so I'll do some...
Fiction, nonfiction, historical?
Probably all nonfiction.
Yeah.
And then I'm involved in a number of businesses, so I will develop a lot of those. Like one of the things we grow at the farm are Christmas trees, and we sell Christmas trees around the world.
Do you really?
And then we're in some other businesses, so I will probably develop some of those and keep busy. And I would love to continue to give speeches around the world. And so I think that I won't just do things in Nova Scotia, but I'll be doing things in Africa, in Asia, and other countries.
And you talked a little bit before the interview started about the fact that you like to cook. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why you love having a garden, because you have a seasonal menu.
That's right.
So how did this interest in cooking start?
It's a long story, but
Was it survival?
There were 5 kids in our family,
okay.
and the 2 sisters older than me both took nutrition and dietetics. And they used to, my mother say to the girls, well, what did you do in school today? What did you learn? And they would talk about it. And they would say, well, this is a girl's thing. And I became competitive, so I started buying books on cooking and learning how to cook. And then later on in life, I hired a lady who had a whole series of private lessons. Then I went to the Cordon Bleu in London. Then I went to Florence, Italy. And then I wrote a cookbook.
So was this all just competitive with your sisters, or did it become your own passion?
Well,
because that's a long way to take.
It was competitive with my sisters to start, and my sister Jeannie, who regretfully is now dead, was and always will be a much better cook and chef than I was. She was just natural in the kitchen. Yeah. She made the most beautiful rolls, the most beautiful everything. She just was a natural in the kitchen. I was competitive to an extent, but never competitive enough to be able to beat her and be that good. But now I love eating things that are fresh, so I have my own gardens, herb gardens and flower gardens and vegetable gardens, and I make all of my own jams, relishes and pickles and raspberries and so on.
Does Mrs. Oliver help you with this, or is she just a lucky...
She studied dietetics, but she doesn't practice. She's more in high tech and so on. But no, I do most of the cooking when we're at home. But
lucky her.
And it's a wonderful hobby.
I bet it is, because you know what? First of all, we have to cook and eat to live. And it's far better to eat good food.
Yeah.
But it takes time and it takes patience.
Yeah.
So you're lucky that you have the skill.
Yeah.
That's really great. You have a daughter, too. What's she doing?
Carolyn has several degrees, and she's had several things in her career that she likes. And now the most recent degree she took was an MBA.
Oh, great.
And so she's now working in Western Canada, in British Columbia, for a credit union. Mm-hmm. And she's doing some IT work with them and using her MBA.
That's wonderful.
And before that, she was in Industry Canada, and she was doing work on program evaluation.
Okay. So she is like her father. She likes various adventures in her life.
Yeah, very much so.
Tell me, Senator, about your legacy. What would you like your legacy to be?
I think my father and mother would want it to be that someone who cared for Canada, someone who worked hard, and someone who gave back to make Canada a better place than it was when they came here.
Well, that's an excellent legacy, and I know your parents would be proud.
Yeah.
Senator, it's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you, and I've known you and admired you for many years, and I wish you all the best in your life moving forward, this next chapter of your life as you finish your time in the Senate and move on to becoming a best-selling author and various other things.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a great honor for me to be on. Thank you.
Thank you.